that quarterback, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. So what do? You bench him and say he has a hamstring injury, and I guarantee you Pace chewed out freaking Nagy for that, saying, hey, that's our guy. You shouldn't have him in. Guess what? Chase Daniel got a win against the freaking Vikings. Just saying.
No, hey, when
Chase
Trubisky left that,
Daniel,
when he went out of that game, I felt scared. I wanted Trubisky to play against the Vikings.
because you can beat the Bears with him in. That's the thing.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
that's my thing. Nagy doesn't deserve blame. It's his second year there. And last year he had Jordan Howard two to lean on to run for almost 1,000 yards. And then what does Pace do? Oh, he's our best running back. We're going to trade him for a sixth rounder.
Yeah.
What in the blue hell is that? Is the GM is the problem? It's not Nagy. Pace set the tone with his first ever draft pick being Kevin friggin' White, mind you. That set the tone for his whole career. It's been rough high first round draft picks, rough free agency stuff. Max contract is going to be $26 million next year. So what does that mean? That means Pace is going to have to probably cut Bears players to keep the rest of the team together, or even sign their draft picks. And guess what? Nagy has to work with that now. That's why I don't blame Nagy. He's literally stuck between a rock and a hard place. His GM doesn't back anything he says. Also, too, on top of this, folks, John Fox disagreed with everything Pace said about Trubisky. He wanted Watson or he wanted Mahomes. Guess what? John Fox would still be here with the Bears coaching if Pace took the quarterback his coach wanted. Yep. His coach, the person he wanted to mentor and help bring up. Yeah, I know John Fox is a defensive coach, but he's still a head coach, so he's over that player. Guess what? When you ignore your head coach, that's a problem. Ryan Pace is at fault, not Nagy. Also, too, moving on to the Lions. Matt Patricia gone, move up Bevel. Go pick up the linebackers coach from the Steelers because he's killing it right now.
Yeah.
There's your defensive coordinator for that. Vikings, why is George Edwards there as a defensive coordinator? Put Zimmer back over the defense. Let Stefanski run the offense full. So that way you have a half and half system.
I'm glad you brought that up because I think I talked about that in our podcast.
Edwards is useless.
I said George Edwards. We asked about who's got to step it up this week, and I said George Edwards because his defense is really, really passive. I agree 100%.
Zim, okay, let's be real here. Anytime that a head coach is hired because of his requisite skills of a coordinator, and then somehow, and honestly, I never believe that any head coach that gets hired because, like in Zim's case, I don't believe Zim woke up one day and said, you know what? I think I've lost my ability to run defense. I think I'm going to give my...
He did it, Green Bay.
And so to me, it's like, if an organization hires a guy because he is good, and then his first how many years has he been there now? 6? This is his 6th season, is it, JB?
Yeah.
And his first 5 seasons he's there, he's essentially got a stellar defense. And then all of a sudden you decide, what would be better for our overall team?
GM also is a big say in that too.
Yeah, you give up your play calling, and then everybody, and then you want to fire that guy because that side of the ball is like, okay, no. Give me back control, and our defense won't be a soft freaking vanilla ice cream cone that everybody can lick and run through. To me, Zim is that type of guy where he'll give you enough rope to hang you, and then he'll make sure that noose is tight enough to choke your ass out. And so he's just waiting.
I love him.
He's waiting, and when the end of the season comes, he'll go up there and he'll kick in the door and he'll say, all right, now the defense is mine. Anybody else got something to say for it? And I think that's the best team for this team because, look, if Zim was running this defense and had it playing the way it would, it's absolutely what Kirk Cousins never had to complement him. And again, like I said, don't twist my words about nitpicking him about critical moments that he's not good enough when you give him all the requisite pieces. The one thing when he had all those stats, even though he didn't do it in critical moments, well, if you have a really good defense, that takes you and keeps you away from a lot of those critical moments a majority of the time, that issue is a non-factor, okay? And so
his defenses were ranked like 20th, 21st.
Right. We saw and here's the funny thing. If as a Packer fan, I would be a hypocritical liar if I did not say Aaron Rodgers went through that for years.
Yeah, he sure did.
It had nothing, and many a times he would get them up 35-28, and there would be 42 seconds left, and the defense and I mean, again, what are you supposed to do? You're standing on the sideline and they score with 3 seconds left.
Yep.
7 straight playoff appearances where his defense gave up after the Super Bowl in playoff games where Rodgers was standing on the sideline and people say, "Oh yeah, well his record in the playoffs has been rough." Well, he doesn't play defense. Tramon Williams, before he came back, gave up multiple passes in multiple games. Seattle being the big one in overtime. I mean, the Larry Fitzgerald play in Arizona, it's literally just play after play on the defense. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
but
So,
anyways,
yes.
back. I do have one thing to say. It's like a Ryan Pace situation in Minnesota. I feel like Rick Spielman has a hand in George Edwards being over the defense. I feel like Zim is. I feel like you're going to see Zim over the defense next year. I really do, because the defense is his baby. In Cincinnati, that was his baby.
All right. We are getting past the 90-minute mark, so I want to get one more question.
I talk
in,
a lot.
and then we're going to wrap this up and get everybody out of here so we're in a decent timetable. Besides that, I'm going to get my face ripped off if I don't go upstairs and get my kids to sleep. All right, last question, guys. Julius, we're going to start with you because we hadn't heard your voice in a while, and I'm getting worried about you. Do you think any of the teams in this division are true Super Bowl contenders, even if it's in the next 2 or 3 years if you're out of the race already this year?
The next 2 or 3 years, any of the teams in the division could be Super Bowl contenders. That's too far of a landscape to venture. So I'm going to stick inside this season. And the obvious, I don't think the Bears make the playoffs. I know my buddy Austin sounded pretty optimistic earlier in the podcast. But I hate the
Julius,
Braves.
what's a term I use a lot whenever I discuss stuff about optimism? False optimism.
Yeah. I don't think the Bears are going to survive that crawl to grace. But the Vikings and Packers, I think both teams could get hot. Like, I almost see both teams equally. I mean, I give the Packers the slight edge because of their running backs, the overall health of the roster. But to me, New Orleans, Seattle, and San Francisco are pretty tough wall to break through. And I don't know if I could see Green Bay or Minnesota doing that over multiple games in the playoffs. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if the Packers or the Vikings made the Super Bowl. I would not be surprised if either one of them did. Like, Aaron Rodgers, just go Aaron Rodgers hot. That defense get hot in Green Bay. Everything clicking. They march to the Super Bowl. Minnesota, we've seen multiple moments of domination from their offense. Kirk Cousins, Dalvin Cook. I mean, it's a little rougher. Their defense, is not as impressive. But I don't know. I could just see both teams being like dark horse Super Bowl contenders in NFC. But right now, I would say neither are front runners.
All right, go ahead, JB.
Well, I think the Packers could get. I think almost any team that makes the playoffs in the NFC can make it to the Super Bowl. It's that close. I could definitely see the Packers. If the Packers get a 2 seed, and you have to run through Green Bay, at least one team has to run through Green Bay to get there, and you don't know what could happen with. Again, top seed could go down. If you have to play the NFC title game in Green Bay, I'd feel pretty good about that if I were you guys. So I think the Packers have this year. I think they have a good shot. If you want to say in a couple years, it all depends on really Rodgers' health. I mean, he's not a young pup anymore. He's still playing top level game, but if
Just
his health
turned
starts
36 years old yesterday, I believe.
Yeah. So if his health starts to go down, I mean, in his late 30s, maybe they fall off a little bit, but I think the Packers are going to contend for the next few years. As far as Minnesota goes, I'm a Vikings fan, and I've told you guys this before. The day they win the Super Bowl is the day before or the day after I die. So I'm not really expecting anything out of them. I never, ever expect the Vikings to be a Super Bowl contender. And it's because of 45 plus years of watching them let me down in so many amazingly horrible ways. Do they have the pieces offensively? Yeah, but Cousins is going to be in his last year of a contract next year. God knows what happens after that. Xavier Rhodes is declined. His play is just way down. Their cornerbacks overall are just, between developing, you may or may not see them develop, but their two starting cornerbacks just aren't very good right now. And it's hard to say that about Xavier Rhodes, but he just isn't very good. And Trey Wayans never was really very good. He has his moments, but I think there are guys behind him, behind both of them, that have potential to be better. Will the Vikings contend? I think the Vikings will be in the discussions for the next couple of years. Will they win a Super Bowl or make it to a Super Bowl? Hell no. And that's just because I'm alive on this planet.
Are you admitting that you may be putting a big target on your back, JB, with how many times you iterate this? Like, people might start thinking that you could be the voodoo doll that needs to be a pin put in him for this whole thing to go off. You might want to consider how much you're putting this out on social media to the entire world, because people are crazy and going on 2020. Like, you might get a lynch mob one day. Like, you know what? We got a number 1 seed. We got to knock your ass off if we really got a chance. And you've made that pretty clear for us. So you might want to start. Yes, you might want to. D might want to start putting a pin in that statement more and more. Like, the more I think about how many times you say that on a national platform, I'm starting to worry about you, man.
Hey guys, at least I know my ancestors will suffer just like me.
Yeah.
Oh, like when I die.
Bobby Lane, 200 years later.
Bobby Lane.
I knew Dave was going to bring that up. All right, Dave, we got to get out of here. Answer the question, man, so we can close this out.
God, Jesus. Rush me. Yes, I think the Vikings in the next couple of years can be true Super Bowl contenders. I think this year they've got to figure out their defense before the playoffs get here. If not, then no. Next year, if Zimmer takes over, I think they're definitely a Super Bowl contender, because especially if they can keep Stefanski there. If Stefanski stays, second year in the offensive system, Cook comes back, I mean, you're going to basically have the same offense. Irv Smith's going to have another year under him. Mr. Beebe's going to come back, I believe, and he's an underrated slot receiver, in my opinion. I loved Beebe when he was healthy for y'all.
Yeah, I like him too.
Yeah, he's a straight speedster, man. I mean, out of that slot, he's like little Sonic the Hedgehog. I liked him.
He's got a little Welker, a little Amendola kind of going from.
It's something that's missing from y'all's offense since he got hurt. Also, too, I think the Bears definitely can be next year, because if they move on to a new QB, I feel like if you sit Mitch on the bench, bring in a new QB, veteran, or, I mean, hell, even if it's Nick Foles. I mean, Nick Foles at least shows he can manage an offense. He can do it. I mean, Doug Peterson ran the read option through the whole playoffs with him, and it worked. And Nagy has shown he runs read option with Montgomery. I feel like that could work. Allen Robinson is a weapon there. You just got to get a couple more receivers. Anthony Miller's been hot and off, but that defense is still there, guys. The defense is still good. You get a game-managing QB that understands Nagy's offense. Mind you, Nick Foles was in KC when Matt Nagy was coming up through the system. So he knows. I think he played in that offensive